Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So I will be talking today about Vietnam and the perception of Vietnam by an Algerian author and playwriter. And I will start with two names, Son and Ho Chi Minh. So in 1969, President Nixon, under the name Son, a pun meaning one who fucks and knocks out, from the French Nike, sonnet, is pronounced dead. The 40,000 Americans killed in the Vietnam War come to the White House to attend the funeral. Nixon says that it must be a mistake because the person who passed away is actually President Ho Chi Minh, not himself. But he is told that Ho Chi Minh didn't die because he continues to live in people's dreams. And the above scenario is the closing scene of a play written by a famous Francophone Algerian writer, Kateb Yacin. He was also a poet, and he wrote this play in 1970, and he titled it L'homme aux sandales de caoutchouc, Man in the Rubber Sandals. L'homme refers to Ho Chi Minh, the first president of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, and he proclaimed independence from the French in 1945. September 2nd, 1945, he proclaimed the independence. And Kateb completed the play after Ho Chi Minh's death on September 2nd, also like the day of independence, the same day, he died the same day, but 24 years later, in 1969. This was the first work that Kateb wrote about a country other than his home country of Algeria. And he saw in Ho Chi Minh and in Vietnam the symbol of the fight against colonialism, but also a symbol of the utopia that he dreamed for his own country. So Ho Chi Minh and Vietnam were an inspiration for Kateb Yacin. It was nearly perfect. He considered Algeria to be a sick woman while Vietnam was a healthy man. So let's talk a little bit about Kateb Yacin. He was born in 1929 in Constantine in Algeria, and he was born in a religious family, but he was also quite well educated, and he learned a lot of ideas from French philosophers, from French writers. But he also started to engage himself already at school with politics. And on May 8th, 1945, when World War II ended in Europe, there was a massacre in his hometown, and a lot of his relatives were killed, and he himself was rounded up and put into a prison, and his mother could not bear all these losses, and she went crazy, and he lost actually his mother, even though she remained alive, but he lost touch with her because she wasn't sane already. So for him, French colonialism became something that he wanted to fight against. However, he was very dissatisfied with what was going on in Algeria, and he departs to France, where he becomes a very famous writer, and he writes in French. And it creates in him a disruption that he writes in the language of the colonizer for his own people. He wanted to be known to his own people, but he didn't want it to be only for the elite. His country continues to disappoint him. So the war in Algeria, 1954, 1962, Algeria gains independence finally from France, and it is a very important event, and we would think that Kateb Yacin would be happy about it, but he wasn't. And why wasn't he happy? Because he saw that his country was not building what he envisioned they were supposed to build. And moreover, what he saw, that there is a fight among different leaders. First, there was Ahmed Ben Bella, who came to power, and after that, he was deposed. At first, the NLF was led by 9 members of the Revolutionary Committee of Unity and Action, so including Ben Bella and Mohammed Haider, and also Orari Boumediene. But then there was a very serious squabble among them, and while Ben Bella first consolidated power, he became simultaneously the president of the republic, prime minister of the government, and commander-in-chief of the army, and he turned the National Liberation Front into his own army, or so Kateb Yacin saw it from France. Then Haider, one of his supporters and allies, who was the Secretary General of the National Liberation Front and oversaw its finances, he absconded to Switzerland and with a large amount of money. And then he was to escape from what was considered persecutions by Ben Bella, and then Ben Bella was removed in 1965 from the office by the military coup by Orari Boumediene. So for Kateb Yacin, these squabbles, they were unbearable because he thought that Algeria could not get its act together. There were a lot of other problems for Kateb Yacin in his native Algeria, which he loved very, very much. So who were the enemies? First of all, it was religions. So he thought that Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, they were bringing all the evil into the world. So he wanted to build a secular society. Now, the other thing was pan-Islamism. He was against putting together all the countries, all the Arab countries, all the Muslim countries under the same banner with the same symbols. He wanted the countries to keep independent because he thought that both pan-Islamism and pan-Arabism, they eliminate the indigenous features, and they colonized indigenous people, because he came from a tribe in Algeria, and he thought that the language and the traditions and the culture of his tribe was completely lost due to this Arab Islamism. So this was his most important enemy. What he found in Vietnam, this is my idea of utopia, because for me it's more about harmony than about technology, and it was also for Kateb Yacin because it was evident for him what he wanted, that the society would be harmonious. What he found in Vietnam, first of all, it was communism. So he thought that communism would get rid of religion, that it would unify the people that were not unified otherwise. Ho Chi Minh would become a symbol. We will talk about it in a minute. The society would bring equality, unity. Ho Chi Minh, the image of Ho Chi Minh was for him a paragon of virtue, for the leaders that he would love to have for his own country. Because there was no money involved, Ho Chi Minh promoted himself as a very modest man. Vietnam was a very poor country, so he wanted to continue with this. Modesty was one of the most important things, and that's why he actually called his book The Man in the Rubber Sandals, because Ho Chi Minh was wearing practically all the time, even during his tenure as president, those rubber sandals. And for him, it was religion that would be abolished by the politics. But what he saw, what he didn't think about, or didn't want to think about, was political religions. Well, he was aware of what was going on, because in France, while looking for the ways to help his country to understand what was going on there, he went to the Soviet Union, and he definitely knew about the events. He went there in the 1960s. He knew about the events that transpired under Stalin, and all the difficulties that the Soviet Union experienced building its own utopia. He was actually a strong supporter of Stalin, but he vacillated sometimes. But from the Soviet Union, he went to Vietnam, and he thinks that he found this ideal there, because Vietnam, like Algeria, they overthrew colonialism. They're building the country in unity. There are no cliques that fight against each other. Ho Chi Minh is a modest person. Well, he didn't want to recognize that the country was actually divided, and there was North Vietnam and South Vietnam that were in civil war with each other, which was in a sense much worse than it was in Algeria. The country, they were claiming equality, but it was evident already when he came to Vietnam at the end of the 1960s that this equality was not. There were a lot of people who were more equal than others, and their lives were better than the lives of the poor people, like in Singapore. And they didn't have a lot of rights because it was an autocratic state. Mm-hmm. But nothing mattered for him, as well as nothing mattered for many French or German intellectuals who went to visit the Soviet Union during the Stalin times, and then they would write glowing accounts of what was going on. But he needed some anchor, some gleam of hope, what would be his ideal country. And he found this country, he decided to find this country in Vietnam. The modesty of Ho Chi Minh it's very interesting, because Ho Chi Minh was one of the strongest promoters of his own cult. This is his first autobiography, written under the name of Chanzantian, and then in French it was published under the name of Changogzang, but it was written by Ho Chi Minh himself, exalting his modesty, exalting all the great things that he had done for the nation, and eliciting adoration from the people for the sacrifices that he made for them. So what Kateb Yacin didn't see and didn't want to see, that while he fought against religions in Algeria, religion was replaced in Vietnam by secular religion, by political religion. Ho Chi Minh was put on this Olympus that they vacated because they banned all the religious activities. The Olympus was a good place to be, so Ho Chi Minh occupied it, and it was very, very important in Vietnam, but in reality it replaced everything that that Kateb Yacin hated in Algeria. Also, his idea of world unity, because he was against pan-Islamism, he was against pan-Arabism, and it was very important for him because of all the suppressions, as he saw them, by Islamism and Arabism that he saw in his country. What he refused to see was a similarity between pan-Arabism and communism, because under communism, the communists in Vietnam and elsewhere, they were eliminating the particularity of each country, of each culture, to bring the communist world together. So the slogan of the communist countries was "Proletarians of all countries unite." So he closed his eyes in order to give the Algerians a view of what a real good world could be. And he didn't want to recognize and to consider that this world was utopia and it was a lie, and that it was not perhaps much better. It's very hard to compare what is better, what is not, than the situation in Algeria. But the play became quite famous. It was famous in France. It was played in Lyon, among other places. It premiered actually in Lyon. It didn't have the same success in Algeria, unfortunately, because he was not able to write in French. I mean, in Arabic. But the idea was that he was denouncing pan-Arabism, but he wanted to save his barbarian language, but he wasn't able to express himself. He wasn't able to bring it to the people. And this frustration, I think, made him to concoct this utopia, this Vietnamese utopia, of which Ho Chi Minh became a symbol. Thank you very much.